Hi guys, my name is Christina and welcome to my channel and welcome to yet another episode of the Weekend Drawing podcast. Today's video, as you can see, is hella long. It's one of those videos that are just super long, and in this video actually I'm doing almost an independent unit of work. I'm starting it this weekend and I'm finishing it this weekend, and I drew a lot. So I'm gonna be also talking, so anytime I have like a very long episode, I pick up a specific topic to talk about, also like overlaying the description of whatever I'm doing on the screen. But this time is going to be really related because I want to talk to you about redrawing certain things after you already drew them. And I'm going to explain you what I'm doing now, why I'm redrawing what I'm redrawing, and just going to explain you my situation and how I'm approaching those things. Because this is something that I'm not constantly worried about, but this is something that anything I'm doing for my comic, I don't usually stress out about any aspects of what I'm doing. I never feel like, oh my god, I'm not sure if I can pull it off, I'm not sure if I can draw this thing, write the thing. Usually it's not something that I'm worrying about. What I am worrying about when I am worrying about things is those situations where I have to change something after I already drew it. Because something like this can create a problem on so many levels, and obviously the obvious reason how it can create the problems because you already drew everything that is supposed to come next. So whatever you change, you cannot change too much, otherwise you would have to rewrite a lot of things that you already did. And because creating a comic is not just writing, it's also drawing, and you can't, it's like drawing is not as easy to fix. I feel like when you're writing, when you have to, take parts out of your story out and then rewrite them, I feel it's just easier to accomplish to just, redraw pages. And also for me personally, redrawing is something that I absolutely hate doing, like drawing something again. And this is something that I struggle anytime my computer deletes something that I already drew. I don't know, it's such just mental thing. When I'm drawing I just do it once, and if I have to do it again, it just makes me very unhappy. I don't want to do, like, to me the drawing only, I enjoy it when I do it once and I just learn what I'm going to draw and like learn how it's gonna come together as I'm drawing it. So when I have to do it again, I don't know, it's just pissing me off and makes me really, really unhappy. So this kind of thing can create a lot of problems because you don't want to scratch out everything that you already drew, but sometimes the situation comes up when you objectively have to go and redraw something or change something that you already did, basically just editing after a lot of things already done. And I have been in situation when I had to do it several times. I've been in this situation in chapter 5, and I'm gonna talk in all of this stuff in detail later. For now, I just want to address what exactly I'm doing now because this is where I'm setting up what I'm doing, and then I'm gonna back and talk about in the drawing thing for the comic in full detail. For the context, this is chapter 7, and what I'm redrawing is currently it's called chapter 7, like page 21.3. Sometimes if I'm adding extra pages on the outline level, I just call them, page 21, and then I call page 21.3, .1, like kind of like if I'm adding pages already after I already give numbers to them. So at the time of me drawing this, this chapter is airing, quote unquote. I'm posting it weekly, and currently we are on page 12. I'm posting page 12 for public, and it's around page 18 for Patreon because I posted earlier on Patreon. So it's very close call. I'm really like the time when I'm supposed to publish the page that I'm currently tweaking is very close to me actually tweaking it. So this is really very close to the time when I have to release it, so it's a little stressful because of this. But realistically, like, it seems to be stressful because I maybe just couple of pages ahead. It sounds scary, but if you think that I'm posting just a page per week, I'm 3 weeks ahead, and I'm posting I'm drawing at least 1 page per week, so it's not a big deal if I have to do 2 pages. So what is happening here? So in this chapter, for the context, so this girl Tsukai, it's my protagonist, she basically just got into this world, in this magical world, and she went to one village, and she was not allowed to stay in this village because of a lot of things, like a lot of things that she knows, a lot of things about her. It just sounds suspicious to the villagers, and they just linked to a lot of negative things, and they kicked her out because just to protect their own people. So they didn't let her stay in the village. They told her that, like, this is basically the direction you want to go, there will be bigger cities on the way, we're a small village, you seem to represent some danger to us, and if some danger would to come from you, we're not able to protect ourselves and our people. But if you go like south to the bigger cities, and especially to Pentakar, the capital of the northern provinces, or northern province, it's just one, then those big cities are more able to protect from danger that's coming from the Kalyanol, the central city of whole Silana. So just try your luck there. So basically she's forced to go on her own through the worlds that she never been to, and like there's a lot of problems with this already. And she also, like, something happens to the key, like the key, the medallion that she had that would be able to open the door between the realities, between Silana and human world. For some reason it's not working, and she doesn't really know why it doesn't work. But she's not able to get to human world even to rest. So she arrives at Silana originally to this village at night, and then she basically stays up all night discussing this with the villagers, and where they inevitably make decision to let her go and not let her stay in the village. So she travels the whole day, and she falls asleep briefly for a night, and then she travels the whole morning again. And basically by this time she didn't have anything to eat, didn't have anything to drink. She is exhausted from walking, and basically it's not just a great time for her. And as the story progresses, as she arrives to the next village that she sees, this village is actually abandoned, and actually not like just abandoned, it's been destroyed. This village clearly had some sign of battle there, and she encounters a monster for the first time, the firstborns. We were drawing them for chapter 8. This is the first time those monsters appear, and as she tries to fight off this monster to protect, because she also finds an older lady over there. And even though she doesn't quite understand what this lady is doing, she doesn't quite understand who this monster is, she's just trying to do what she thinks is right in the situation. And in the end of the chapter, basically she's exhausted, and she's like totally passes out because of everything she's been through this whole situation. So I decided that I don't really remind the reader enough times that she is exhausted. Obviously, if you think and you realize, well, the girl was up for 2 days without water or food, and she was traveling, and she, been stressed out, and it's just clearly anybody would be super exhausted. Plus she was walking all this time. But it's not something that reader immediately will be thinking and analyzing. I need to remember to the reader that she is exhausted. So in the end, when she, something as dramatic as she's just passing out happens, I just don't want it to seem like it came out of the blue. I want to imply that it doesn't just happen because she also was stressed out by this monster and exhausted by fighting with this monster. I want to remind the reader that she, in fact, is very tired already from everything that happened from the beginning of the story. Because this is something that I also notice with publishing my work online. This is something that I like about publishing the work online, that you get immediate reaction from the readers, and you see what they picked up on, what they didn't pick up on, and it tells you a lot about the type of writer you are, what you probably doing right, what you probably don't do quite right. And I never want to tweak whatever I'm doing to make sure everybody understands everything. I don't want lower the bar of implying things, or I don't want to just start telling things very directly to the reader just so that everybody understands. I know I want, kind of like my comic, I think in every story has its own learning curve about the world and how the writing works and how much the writing is going to tell you. And I have my certain idea of how much I want the writing to tell and how much I want the writing to really, really break down things to the reader. But what I did notice, one thing is the reason that I'm posting my comic only once a week. It's really hard to keep in mind everything that's been going on, even in the previous chapter. Normally, if you read whatever I already had for the comic, it will take you a couple hours. Well, actually, I don't even know that much. But whatever I have, including, for example, just from chapter 1 to chapter 6, reading that, you can do it in a heartbeat, and you're gonna remember everything pretty freshly. So if you just consume the story normally as if the story is already written, you will remember everything. However, the fact that I'm posting once a week, for example, remembering what was 2 chapters ago, it equals 2 years ago for a reader. So that's a big thing, and some readers not necessarily remember everything. So I always have to battle kind of this balance of, even though I'm writing my comic to be read in one sitting, like just keep reading as if it's published, I also know that some readers don't remember certain things. But so I usually always choose to go for the idea of people reading the comic in one sitting, because comic as it goes now, like for example through chapter 7, it's been released once a week. It just happens now currently, but comic will spend longer amount of time being just written after it's already written. So this is my priority. However, I feel like this situation not just have to be repeated a little bit. So basically I had originally just one page of her walking. Then you see in the last panel, like the third panel, she's just taking a little bit of a break, and she's looking up, she's looking at the city, and then she moves into the city, not like the city, like this abandoned village. And I decided to break this page into two, and as you can see, the page like 721.2 that you see in the left bottom corner, I decided instead like to keep a panel of her just walking, and then the last panel when she just standing and looking up, I decided to have her bent down kind of in exhaustion, and I decided to spend 2 extra panel on the extra page, that one I'm doing right now, to just emphasize that she is indeed tired, that she's like rubbing her face, that she looks exhausted, so that I'll be also drawing her under eye bags really hard in this chapter. I'm really going for it. She has little panda eyes. But I wanted to spend these extra panels that maybe necessarily don't progress the plot a lot, but they do remind the reader that she is tired. So when hardships come up, and when she meets the monster, and when we realize she has to fight the monster, we understand that whatever she's doing, she is doing because she's running on the wave of adrenaline, and she's just obviously scared, and this more of a survival mode. That's why she gets more energized and she can do what she can do, and that's why basically all the remainders of her strength leaves her after she is in safety and after the monster is no longer a threat. So that's kind of the reason why I'm doing this. And I knew that the beat is missing. I knew that I needed to emphasize this part a little bit more in this chapter, in this scene. But I don't know, sometimes really when I just finished a scene and I feel like something is missing a little bit, but I already was working so hard on this scene, on this chapter, and just want to move forward, I just let myself do that. And then I return to the scene maybe sometimes later, maybe a couple of months later, and I decide if indeed it needs a beat or it's fine. And for this case, I decided it does need a beat. Like I don't want like I'm okay if my readers don't pick up on something necessarily, if they need to realize that they need to pay extra attention, or they didn't really realize some logic. And I have, when I'm looking at the comments for when I'm posting my page, sometimes I see somebody, for example, didn't get something, but someone else would explain it in the comments, and sometimes somebody would actually link a page where it was mentioned before. And yeah, so my judgment is if people don't realize something just because of the speed of how fast or rather how slow the comic is being released, then it's okay. But if they don't understand, if they just went and read through it and they still didn't get it, then it's my problem. And I feel like this is the case. So yeah, so this is kind of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, and this is yet another time when I am taking a break during finishing chapter 8. Poor chapter 8. It was disturbed so many times. It was put on hold for so many times. This is the third time. But I just felt like it's very important, and I decided to just draw it during this weekend. And every time I'm coming back and drawing some chapters, some panels in the chapters that I drew some time ago, there is always one overarching, not like a problem, but like a challenge that I have. And this challenge is that my style always slightly changes. Like it's not changing that it becomes different style, but I hope I can say that it is improving constantly. For example, I definitely can see I don't know if you guys can see it because I've been drawing chapter 8 with you like during this podcast. Are you able to see the difference in quality? Like obviously not something that I'm drawing right now, but you see the references on the left, like pages that I already drew on the left. They, I would say, a little bit more sketchy, a little bit less polished. You see a little bit more of brush strokes. They're not as polished. And as I'm drawing now, the close-up, you can see that my style a little bit different. Like I'm making things a little bit more polished. The way I'm using the colors is a little bit more blended, and this is something, it's just, and because the change is so small, and this change is not necessarily about what I learned about drawing what, and it's more like a little bit of a technique upgrade, a little bit, and it's so small that it's hard for me to just go back a little bit and match it to the style. So this was a little bit of my concern. However, I draw hair the same. So for the previous page, when I'm just redrawing her face, instead of looking up, she's looking down. There I'm just drawing hair, and this is completely fine. It totally works. But for this close-up panels, I was aware that I am like, you might notice that the style a little bit different, but there is nowhere near whatever the problem I had in chapter 2. And I talk about chapter 2 problems a lot here. But I also figure, since it is a close-up, and in close-up it's okay to have things like the same things more drawn, because here I'm drawing her face instead of like the panel that is below. I'm drawing her face way closer, and it makes sense that I will make sure to make it more polished. So I think, it's not ideal, but I think it's okay considering the circumstances. So this is a little bit of the story of why I decided to do this redraw for this particular page. And and now I just want to talk to you a little bit about, or a lot, not like a little bit, maybe a lot, about the overall redrawings. And the thing is, it might happen. And my logic, like how I try to do every time, like I have several stages in my comic creation process. There is a process where I create the plot. There's a process where I outline the page, like you saw it in one of the previous podcasts, where I would just draw lines and decide what would be happening on each page, on each panel, and what panel is going to be. And then I decide to draw a scene, I pick colors, I start drawing the scene. So I have all the stages, and typically I have the rules of not going back. After the stage is complete, you don't go back and tweak the stage if you're already on another stage. And this is something that for me is just a productivity reason. Like I need my comic to be done. I don't know if the word perfectionist applies to me. I don't try to do something perfect, because first of all, I don't think there is such thing as perfect, and whatever I think is perfect is just whatever Christina thinks is perfect. So there is no objective perfection. What I think is, to me, what's more important is to have it done. And in very close second, it goes to get it done as well as you possibly can. And they're together, like very close. But to me, it's more important to have it done. If, for example, I'm drawing something and I know something is not exactly perfect, not like perfect, like it could be better. But there's a chance of like spending more and more time there, get more frustrated, waste time, or get it done and move on and learn why it was wrong and fix it next time, and like learn to never do it mistake ever again. I'm gonna choose the latter. And this is just me, because I'm very like the way I think about creating comics is that, or like all art in general, unless it is done, you don't have anything. So if you like have something in progress, or you're working on a book, you're working on the comic, you're working on something, it doesn't matter like whatever you're working on. Like working on something doesn't mean anything. And I'm very harsh about this, and I'm very harsh about it with my friends. Like I have friends who are like working on a book for like 5-7 years, and in my opinion, they're not, like they don't have a book. Like that's it, like they don't have anything. And they will be, for example, we'll be having conversation, they're like, well, I'm a writer, I'm doing this. I'm like, well, girl, do you have a chapter to show for? You don't. So in my books, you don't have, like, if you have nothing to show for, I'm not gonna take it serious. And this is just my way. Like to me, art, if it's not completed, like if you don't have a piece of art or like fragment of it completed, it's not done, you didn't do it, it doesn't count. To me, finishing something is very crucial stage of having something that you can show for. So for me, I always will be focusing on completing something. So that's why I don't, like if I go to the next stage, like for example, I'm done with writing the story, like writing the whole, like the plot, like now I'm more of a pantser, but like overarching plot, if I done doing this and I done making an idea for what's supposed to happen in this chapter, I'm now drawing my lines, it's done. I'm not going and change it whatever I've written, because it's gonna have a domino effect that's gonna make me change the lines, and I cannot afford changing things again and again. It's like, Christina, you make a decision and you own up to it, and if you realize that this decision was perfect, we'll keep analyzing why it's not perfect and make better decisions with next chapters that grow, instead of just going and redoing because you can be doing it forever. So this is how I'm typically doing. So in this logic, if I realize that I have to redo something in the past, going so far as redrawing something in the scene that been already drawn, I better have a very good reason for this, and I better have I better do it the way that is very contained. So for example, in this situation, I just analyzed, okay, I'm feeling like I'm missing a beat. If, for example, implementing this beat would mean that I have to redraw quite a lot of things, like change dialogue a little bit, do a little bit, I would not be doing this. I would be working with what I already have. I would be like, well, this is what you wrote. Now continue the story and work with whatever you already wrote and make it work. Like, you know, kind of like if you're drawing and your head twitched, I don't know, and you have a funky line, you have to draw around it. You have to draw this crooked line into the drawing. Like, just use your skill to blend it with the whole drawing so nobody noticed, so it works. So this is kind of my logic if I have to draw a lot, and if the changes would require me to change a lot. In this particular case, I analyzed and I realized I can fix it by taking the page that I already have, keeping one panel from one page, tweaking a little bit second panel from that page, and for another page reusing what I already originally had on the first page and adding 2 more panels. And nothing else would have to change at all. Everything before and everything after will be untouched and will be even better for it. In this case, yes, I would do that. Also in this situation, as I explained, I realized that I do feel like the beat is missing. I want to remind the reader that she is indeed tired, so it doesn't look like overly dramatic that she just passes out. And also I don't want to come across of like this type of writer who is like, oh, my character just passing out. If they're passing out, I want to have a very concrete reason why. If the character is physically unable to do something, I wanted to have a reason, and I want the reader to know, and I want it to be consistent. In this case, yeah, having no food, no water, walking for 2 days, yeah, will do that to you potentially, especially if you need to fight a monster in the end. So this is something that I wanted to implement, and I realized that it wouldn't disrupt a lot of the chapter, and it's very contained. And in this particular case, it was worth it for me, and I realized it's not too much sacrifice, it's not going to take a lot of time, and it's not going to affect the whole chapter, and it's not going to create like ripple effects and domino effects for everything to come. So I decided to do this, and this is overall my rule. However, it's not the first time for me redrawing this. I have another example, and I was thinking to do a whole another video about it, like showing it with pictures and everything. I've been asked from my patrons for this particular scene, and the scene in question is seen from chapter 5, in the end of chapter 5, when I have Ivory character, and because this video is drawing, there's a lot of visual information on the screen already. I will not be adding images, but if you like, there's a link to my comic that you can read for free down below. You can just go and see the last scene of chapter 5. You can easily find the chapter. They're all like visible. They have their own covers individually, and if you click to the link, you will immediately see all the different chapters. You can links to them. So this one, I actually was asked, like I changed whatever was happening in that scene. I actually changed quite a lot, and it was because I changed what I thought about the character. So the character of Ivory, I figured out more about her later. I was drawing chapter 6 again, I think, or maybe beginning of chapter 7, but basically I was drawing completely different chapter, and this is where I realized that the character just wouldn't act as she would in that scene. And actually I realized way more things about this character, and realized that I need to change basically her behavior, and the scene is going to change a lot. So that was more dramatic situation where I had to change quite a lot, and I want to make a video about it now. I think it's a good time now. I was actually asked by my patrons, because I told my patrons that I'm changing the scene and how the scene goes, and a couple of my patrons, they asked if I can release the original pages, and I told them the same thing that I'm gonna tell you now, is that I didn't think it's a good idea. I wanted you to get to know the character a little bit more, because the scene itself changes how the character presents herself, and this is the first scene. Before, we just see her from the side, and this is where she is actually protagonist of the scene, and she takes action in the scene, and we kind of in her shoes for the scene. So I felt, since it's the first scene, is kind of establishing what this character is going to do, and the changes that made for the scene actually has everything to do with her character, with her choices, and what her agenda is and what she's supposed to be doing. I felt like it's too early to release original pages. I want this character to establish herself a little bit more in the next chapters, and you're gonna get to know her a little bit more, or at least the idea how she presents herself in this particular in this particular scene sinks a little bit in, so you get used to this is how the character represents herself. So when I show you the chapter, like the scene that was deleted, the original version of the scene, it doesn't sway your opinion of the character, because this is something that I don't want to happen. But I feel like it's been some time I can actually show it. But back then it was more dramatic, but it also had to weigh my option and think, okay, I have to change some things, and I have to make sure there's no ripple effect for the rest of the things that I already drew. And second of all, I want it to be absolutely necessary, like how necessary is that for me to do this change. And also, again, I want it to be contained. I wanted to know kind of like the unit of redraws that I want to be doing, and I also wanted to salvage as much information as I possibly can from whatever, basically whatever I already drew. I wanted to keep as much as I possibly can. So because I already drew it, I already put in hours and work. So from this perspective, I always want to keep it in mind. And overall, this is something that I do. Overall, I like to make sure no panel, none of my even smallest drawing goes to waste. And it's not because I just love my drawing so much. It's because it's time. Time is a huge factor of me creating my comic, and time spent on drawing something has it's very important. If I spend time on something, drawing it, I better make all this time work for it 100% or even more. So that's why I'm talking a lot about reuse. If you already drew something, another panel is really similar, just reuse as much as you can, and then tweak it a little bit so it looks good. And the same, if I'm redrawing something, I try to salvage as much as I possibly can. I try to not redraw everything, so I make sure that backgrounds stay the same. I still can use the same backgrounds that I already drew. So in chapter 5, basically there was 2 things actually that I wanted to change, and one is that obviously the main thing is how the character reacts. So originally she basically gets attacked, and she basically is threatened and asked to give location of Sakai and tell where Sakai went. And originally Avery, she would be more of a peaceful character, and she was just a refugee from Eastern province, and she pulled this fancy power move when she was threatened to give Sakai's location, and she made Sakai disappear. Basically, she went around those people and she played on the side of Sakai and protected her from those people, and she just tricked everybody. But at the same time, when she's been confronted about this and she's been attacked, she barely escapes, because she's not a badass warrior. This was not her personality. However, I changed it so that she actually became that. She became a badass warrior. I realized she's not just a refugee from Eastern province. She actually a close advisor to Penumbra. She's a very talented warrior for the light. I realized the whole plotline about her whole past, the magic that she has, her mindset, her beliefs, and I realized she's a completely different character than I thought her to be. And one of the reasons that she's more of the peaceful character in the novel that I wrote originally, but in the comic I realized no, she's not going to be that. She's a different girl. She's a bad bitch. And I realized that absolutely doesn't make sense that she kind of escapes and get her ass beaten a little bit. I realized that when she's being confronted, she actually shows up her true colors, and she shows that she's actually so much stronger than those people, and she easily beats them, and she actually has more plans on herself, on her own, to catch those people later on. So basically it's not like these people are threatening her, and that they were part of her plan all along, and they will still be playing according to her plan after. So that thing I changed. And also I changed the people who are threatening her. I changed them because before I just drew like just random people, and some, like most of them, were just Caucasian looking people. However, if people are from northern province in my story, they look more they look like Asian people, the looks wise. And I realized also, I thought, who are they, who they're working with, who they're working for. And I realized that most of them, except the leader, they gotta be northerners. They gotta look Asian basically, because they are from northern province, and it's also gonna tell a lot of, you know, stuff about those people and who they are and what they do and what's their point. So I realized I need to change the looks of those people. So I changed that. So my overall advice when you're changing something is literally just, it's okay, but analyze and check. And if you have to change something, you realize that nothing gets done by having everything constantly changed. And I'm really not into changing something. My logic is, if make decision, commit to a decision. Make good decision once, you know, don't make like small, mediocre, you know, decisions here and there. You just have to make a decision, and you have to commit, and you have to do your absolute best with this decision. And I'd rather put my whole work in making the right decision once. So analyze, make sure you're not outdoing it. Make sure that whatever is drawn, you would like to keep drawn most of the time, unless it's absolutely necessary for the story. It is absolutely necessary for the character. It has some important information. And obviously, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you go further and you realize, well, this thing doesn't work anymore. And that's also why, like, this type of redraws, this is also why I like being ahead with my pages. Like, I'm drawing pages maybe, you know, 80 pages ahead. So I'm drawing a page, but the page 80 pages ahead is the one that I'm posting every week. And I draw typically faster than my release schedule. So I keep building this backlog. And to me, it's extremely, extremely important, because if I have to do a change, I'm able to. So I have this 80 pages window where I can, if I absolutely need, go and change something. And my readers won't have to reread the same thing changed, because as I said previously, I don't like this to happen, because if people read something first, this is going to be their baseline, right? If I'm changing something, they will still, like, whatever they consumed first, something that they're going to associate the most and something that they're going to consider as the most authentic. So I don't want to kind of play with my readers like that, and I want to make sure my readers get the right information and they, you know, believe and associate with exactly what I gave them. I don't want to, like, just pull the rug under them and just expect that they're going to take it. So that's kind of my logic on this. That's why I have this buffer. And both changes that I made, both in chapter 5 and both here, I was able to make right before readers would read it. So that's also why I have a buffer. So again, getting back to my advice, make sure the change that you're making is absolutely necessary. Because another thing, yes, you don't know what's going to happen next sometimes if you're a pantser, or if you're just writing a comic sometimes, or something serialized, sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen in the next installment, right? And this is totally okay. So, but another thing that you can do with writing, you have to blend everything in quite a lot. So if you have some decisions in writing or in storytelling that you made earlier, and that maybe, you know, in your grand plan now don't really work as well, you can still work around this. You can still use creative imagination to work around them and make them blend well. Like, try to exhaust all of that first. And only when you realize that that doesn't work and it's just not going to work and you absolutely need to make these changes, only then make those changes. And now let me interrupt myself real quick, because I'm doing something a little bit different, like the drawing wise. So another thing that I wanted to go and touch up. So in here you can see my favorite thing to draw, grass, so bucket grass. But the thing is, this particular panel doesn't get changed. Like, this panel, I'm not changing this panel for the reasons that I just told you for this particular scene. But I was looking at this panel after I spent a lot of time drawing chapter 8, and then I was looking at this panel. I absolutely hated the grass, like especially the one that didn't touch up yet. I feel because the grass takes such a big part of this panel and overall such a big part of this page, I just felt like that's just not good enough. And obviously, like, the reason why I have so much grass, I just wanted to show the distance, how much distance like I walked, because we see so much of the road and we see that she's just arriving to the city. sorry, the village. I'm not revealing the village yet, but we just get to understand how, like, there's a long road, and she walked through the whole road already, and it's been a long walk, and she's tired again bringing this home. But at the same time, there's a lot of this grass area, and I realized that the way I drew grass sucks. I drew it really poorly. I didn't like, it's absolutely not detailed. It's totally boring. And as I was looking at it, see, like, ugh, disgusting. Like, I was like, Christina, you cannot have this much, like, this grass to take so much of the whole panel, of the whole page, and not have drawn better than this. Like, you cannot do this. I understand that in chapter 7, I'm still working through my style overall, and the grass quality actually improves slowly throughout the chapter. But still, like, absolutely disliked it. And I was looking at this even before I decided that I will go back and redraw. Even before I decided that, like, not like redraw, that I'm gonna edit a little bit, like add some information. Before I decided that, I still already knew that I really want to check this grass, and this is where I was struggling. This is actually where it was pretty close call. As I told you, like, I prefer things done, and then in the close second, my priority is to get things done really well. So this is where I really started clashing, because I was like, Christina, but this grass is not done really well. You know that, like, it's not good looking grass. And I was like, but it's fine. At least it's done, right? I'm moving on, and I'm going to draw better grass from now on. I learned my lesson. This grass doesn't look good. But then another part of my brain, but fixing this grass is not going to be such a hard task. Like, just go and fix that grass, girl. Like, it's not looking as, like, it's almost embarrassing how bad this grass is drawn. And this is so, like, I was like, yeah, I know, like, it's actually, like, this is almost like unforgivable situation. Like, it's not, I don't know. So this, I was already contemplating doing that. And then when I realized that I actually gonna change these pages, I realized, well, then I have absolutely no excuse, because I'm already hanging out on these pages, and I absolutely have to fix grass, absolutely have to do it. And yeah, this is why I'm touching up the grass, because this is something that I was thinking for a while already, and I still didn't draw it to the standard of chapter 8. Like, by the time I would finish drawing with this grass, like, it still wouldn't be by the standard of chapter 8, like, not at all. You guys saw how I'm drawing chapter 8. I'm really, really particular now on the backgrounds. I'm making sure they're all well drawn through. I don't have no areas when you like you see here in the background, you actually see brush strokes, like, yeah, kind of like finish that, haha. This is not something that I'm doing now anymore. I'm actually, no, this is one of my priorities now, to draw backgrounds through really, really well and make sure everything like a grass just kept drawn. I don't want any area of my drawing to look like I didn't want to draw it, or I just wanted to get it over with. So, but still, like, because this is still chapter 7, I didn't draw everything like as well. I still kept it like a chapter 7 level of drawing, and not exactly chapter 8, because this is another, like, as I was mentioning before, this is another thing that I'm kind of has to balance always when I go back and I redraw certain scenes, or like tweak something or draw something, you know, in the channels, in the chapters that I finished a while ago, is that my style improves, and I cannot kind of come with the style and the level that I have now and go there, because it will stand out, and because it will be, for example, one panel or one page that is drawn better. I don't want it to look like, why? Well, it's like the whole comic is like, for example, this chapter is this level, and then all of a sudden this page is this good, and then it all goes down the hill. So I don't want to I don't want to ever have the point in my creation of the comic where it feels like things go down the hill. I want everything always to improve. So when I'm inserting my current style in, I have to downgrade it a little bit as much as I can, like the balance of if I'm comfortable with drawing it like this to like it blends to the chapter. So in this case, I didn't, I guess, draw it to the level of chapter 8, but I'm still trying. Like I see, like I'm touching a little bit of the buildings and everything. Since I'm here, some things that were bothering me and something that I thought I could draw better, like for example the edges of the grass when it meets the road, and I'm gonna draw a road actually a little bit here too, not too much. Again, like there is always a thought in my brain, it's like don't waste too much time like polishing things that this doesn't matter, maybe nobody ever gonna notice, and you have more important things to do. You have to finish the comic, to finish the chapter, to finish this redo. But I just thought like my consciousness wouldn't let me pass, and I wanted to kind of say it to highlight, even though I'm saying, like, to me, finishing something is still a bigger priority, like finishing something well and doing the job very well, like as well as I possibly could, is almost just as close. So it doesn't mean that I'm gonna half-ass anything that I'm doing, but it's just very close. But when the question is pretty tight and, you know, the decision making is very close, like should I do it or should I not do it, this is usually where just finishing it works. And also, as you can see, sometimes things happen that I go back and I tweak something and make it better. I think I went to chapter 6 too and like tweaked a little bit, like one of the panels, Koroi's face wouldn't let me sleep at night. Would not let me die peacefully. I just feel that this face is not drawn good, so I still went and adjusted it a little bit. And sometimes it's okay to give yourself a little bit of a break. So yeah, so I just wanted to explain that. And now I just want to talk a little bit of just overall, like the actual drawing part of this actually drawing session. So this actually angle, it's not the easiest angle to draw, and I think I already told you like about this angle in particular, because it's harder to read emotions when the head is tilted forward a little bit. And usually if you would like to use this angle, I would personally recommend to just use it without being this panel to be meant to show emotions. This angle is great to show the character is tired, or just overall to show like body language things, but for facial expression it's just not the best one. For example, you know, like how you look from this angle, if you look at the mouth and lips during this angle, they will bend like if they would in the smile, and just because of how mouth and lips are stretched around the skull. This is how it works. So for example, if you want to have angry expression with the lips from this angle, it will be very muddled, because from this angle lips already have this smiling like crescent shape. And if you don't want this thing to read when, for example, the emotion that you're showing is absolutely opposite, then this angle can mess it up. Or for example, like a surprise, I was telling it to you with Koroi's scene where he's surprised and shocked, and I also was drawing him from this angle looking down, and it's very hard to do because when you're surprised or you're shocked, your eyebrows go up, but from this angle it's almost impossible to see that your brows go up, because they technically go just towards you, like towards the camera, and you can't see that they're going actually up. You don't see the movement, the difference is not clear. So I think this particular pose, just overall, obviously you do the best judgment for your own work, but what I realized, you have to be very cautious with this pose if you're drawing it for the emotional purposes. But for something like this, for this panel, it actually works really well, because this panel is not about showing emotion, it's about showing just a basic body language and the basic things that we can read. We can see that her eyes is closed, her face is overall relaxed, that she is kind of rubbing her face, she's holding her face, and this is basically already communicates pretty well that she is tired. And it doesn't matter the angle of the face, it doesn't matter really her facial expression, it just needs to be relaxed and look like tired. And tiredness is not really an emotion, it's just the state of your physical state, and that's why it works really well for this particular angle. Another thing that I want just to keep in mind for this angle is that when you draw an angle like this, it's important to remember that skull is pretty huge. And this is something when I was a newbie like artist and I would draw people, this is something that I would constantly forget, because the face is something that we put a lot of our attention on, and something that is easy to forget is how the skull is actually the rest of the skull, like where our brain is way bigger than our face. Our face is just a quarter, or not a quarter, sorry, it's a third of our whole head. So every time you see angles where the face is bended, like not like the face, like the head is tilted or something like this, and we get to see more of the actual head, like the skull, the area where the brain is, we have to remember that this area is pretty big. Just get ready to draw a lot of hair and a lot of head. So yeah, this is something for this pose that I want to mention. Also, in regards to this pose, another thing that I really want to talk about is how to not to lose your understanding of how the skull is shaped, where if you have, for example, a pose like this where the head is tilted down and hair do cover a lot of the structure of the face. And this is something that I also used to do. Like, basically all my advice that I'm giving you is based on things that I used to do not great. So what I used to do, or rather what I used to do wrongly, is that every time I would have a pose when you have a lot of hair and they're covering head, I would not pay attention too much to the actual structure of the head, because hair would be covering something like ears, that would cover something like jaws and whatnot, and I would really forget to think about it because like hair is covering it. But the thing is, if you don't do it, the area of the face that you have visible stop being looking correct. Like, it starts looking odd because you didn't think, like, no area of human body can exist without your understanding of the rest of the human body. You have to understand how this area is attaches, where everything is connected. So another thing that I want to just point out, because this is, like, again, this pose is challenging as well. Like, this is not the easy breezy pose that you can just get over with and draw easily. This is something that, at least for me, demands some sort of thought put into it. And especially, like, I will be talking about the hand, when the hand is connected to the face. But yeah, this is something that I found is very important to think about, because you're drawing just a fragment of a cheek, just a fragment of a jaw, just a fragment of things. And if everything else is covered with hair, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't, still think. And sometimes it really helps to just draw it through underneath the hair. Just draw it through and then cover it with the hair later. Then it will make sure you can connect things on the face, on the area that is visible better. And at this point, I don't need to draw it through underneath the hair, but I used to do it before. Like, in my earlier days of drawing, this is what I would totally do. If something is covered, I would still draw it through and then draw the thing that is covering it, just to make sure that I got it all right. And that's just an advice that I wanted to give you, because you never want to think, oh, this pose, I have like some coverage and whatnot, and not to think about, the correct anatomy. You always have to think about correct anatomy. Another thing that I wanted to point out in this particular pose, because this one indeed has a lot of like small challenges, is the hand. You saw earlier I used free transform tool in Photoshop and I made it bigger. It's another thing that always important to keep in mind when you're drawing close-ups. When you're drawing a person standing in their full height, it's really easy to understand like how each part of the body is like size proportion to another part of the body. But if you're doing close-up like this, for example, you're having a crazy close-up on the face and the hand, because you don't have the whole body as a context, it's really easy to make a mistake and make the hand too small or too big. And this is also really important to focus. And I just did this mistake as well at the sketching stage. And then as I started drawing through the face, I realized, hey, the hand should be bigger. So this is something that, guys, I suggest you pay attention, because I always keep myself accountable for this. I always keep thinking about those things. Like, this is one of the things that I'm afraid to get wrong. So this is something that I also want to mention out as I'm doing it. And as you can see, I'm using a lot of free transform tools, and this is what I like about Photoshop. I know I like it when I was in art school, and when I was starting to draw in Photoshop, there was a lot of like weird stigma from my teachers saying, well, hey, it's kind of cheating if you are doing something like this, if you are doing free transform or whatever. That's like not a proper drawing. You need to get it all immediately. But it's like this kind of idea of elitism in there, and I understand, because like if you're drawing traditionally, there's a lot of things you learn to do with no help. However, even in the traditional way, you still have things that you can some things that you can use to help yourself draw. You can for example, what I'm saying for mirroring, always in the digital space. In traditional art, what they suggest you do, you just flip your canvas vertically, so it makes it upside down, and this is still will help you to do it and to see errors. You can put it next to a mirror and whatnot. My thinking about all of this, like obviously digital art provides a lot of tools that are very helpful, but I'm not feeling like those tools makes you a worse artist. They just help you get through the stages of like realizing that you made an error and fix the error way faster. And I'm all for way faster. Like if you can figure it out faster, that's great. It doesn't mean you're stupider or not as good of an artist because you just did it faster, and you did it faster because of the digital tool. And it just allows you to draw way more drawings during your lifetime. And traditional arts just takes way more time. And the more you draw digitally and you realize you have to fix certain things, it's still a lot of learning, and you still understand how things look the right way. And yeah, this is something that I wanted to point out as I'm at it. And another thing that I wanted to talk again about this particular pose, because it is a little challenging, and as I was drawing it, I was very apprehensive. And what I did here, and what I, as one of my suggestions you do if you encounter the pose that's a little bit challenging and you're drawing it through and you're not sure if it's gonna all come together yet, start drawing on different areas. Try not to focus on the areas that you really want to draw. Stop thinking about drawing hair. For example, here I keep hair for the last almost in every situation, and especially in the poses where a lot has to do with anatomy or the pose is complicated, I leave them for last. And I try to draw different areas of the drawing at once. So I try to like jump around the drawing, and as you can see, I draw a little bit of her hood, a little bit of her shoulder, a little bit of her eyes, a little bit of her brows, and I'm moving always around the canvas. And this really helps to kind of get different, like focus, like jump you, like make your focus jump on different, like from different thing to another. It really helps to just have a kind of every time you jump on another thing that you put attention on, then it helps you forget on the thing that you were drawing a second ago, and then you go back to it. You have to get an opportunity to relate it to with a fresh eye. And even if something is challenging, you just gotta keep drawing, because sometimes you cannot understand what is wrong if you didn't draw it through to the certain degree. And again, in digital space, you always can. There's a lot of tools that can help you fix it and help with that. You can use free transform and, transform, distort, and warp your drawing. But what really helps, if you are concerned, like with this pose, I was really concerned. I wasn't sure how is it coming together. Is it coming together at all? And what helps is really keep drawing through, because sometimes you really need to draw through and get more details in to understand if things working. And if something is not working, sometimes you have to draw through to understand what exactly is not working. Also, when you're drawing image in this more challenging angle, what helps is to find some elements of the character or whoever you are drawing that help to emphasize the angle. So instead of me, for example, really trying hard on selling her head tilt angle, I'm focusing just as much on emphasizing the hood and how the hood is facing the camera. Because if I can get the hood look correct for this angle, this hood already helps the reader or the viewer to understand the angle overall. So I don't have to put emphasis on the anatomy itself, because anatomy is, I would say, it's more fluid than something as structured is just, drawing a jacket. I don't know, and just drawing a hoodie. So don't necessarily put a lot of pressure on yourself to sell the angle through anatomy alone, or for example, in this case, if you see just part of the face, it's also important to utilize everything else. And in the comic, what can be really helpful, because for example, she's wearing the same hoodie throughout the whole chapter, and that really helps because everybody knows how this hoodie looks like. Everybody knows where the hood of this hoodie ends and whatnot. So if I get the hoodie in the right perspective, then it already will help the reader, and your drawing, to show what the angle it is. So again, just giving you all the different advices that I can, that I also thought of while I was drawing it. And again, this is my standard order of how I'm drawing. I like to get my background first, and then as the last thing, I like to draw hair. And this is the background that I'm reusing. I'm cheating a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, because this background I grabbed from the previous little bottom panel from the page. And this background is not that drawn through, it definitely needs more detail by the standards of chapter 8. This is not the type of background that I would love to use, but it matches the background that I'm using in this particular chapter. And because it's a crazy extreme close-up, I can get away by making this background extra blurry, kind of lens defocus and whatnot. Also, you guys know this particular technique that I like using for the hair. I absolutely love to have this rim light on the hair and have the hair kind of lit from behind. And if you see just in real life how it works, if you are lit from behind, your hair on the edge, they will have this unusually bright rim and almost halo. And even if your hair are dark, still this halo would come across as if like this edge of your hair is white color, like your hair would look really bright. And this is something that I absolutely like utilizing for the foreground, like for the background, for the extreme close-ups. This is something that can really help you add details to the close-up without going, because close-up can be tempting to start drawing things that you don't necessarily want to start drawing, like pores and like small hairlings in the brows, small hairlings in the lashes. This is not necessarily what I personally like doing. That would be more of a real life close-up. What I love doing is kind of think about a cartoon character close-up. So when you close on this character, you don't necessarily get to see extra information of their face and extra stuff on their face that you haven't seen before. You're gonna see still the same thing, just more polished and more drawn through in higher resolution, basically. I used to be one of the artists, so if I do extreme close-up on my characters, I would start drawing lashes. But something about it, at least for my comic, wouldn't work. Even though I draw in like more of a realistic style, it still would feel a little bit weird, because the way I'm drawing lashes when the character is a little bit more far away creates one look, like because I'm drawing like a hard line around the eye. But if I draw the close-up, and I draw lashes and then I zoom out this close-up, it's not gonna read the same as a far away image of the character. It just creates different look. That's why I just like to keep everything the same level of details, just kind of like higher resolution. And this thing that is kind of cool to do with hair, because you can really emphasize the close-up by adding a lot of details to the hair, because I draw hair, basically the way you draw hair doesn't really change from close-up or not, and I really like to go very crazy with this rim. And overall, to me, with a comic version of the hair, what helps, in my opinion, is to sell the edge of the hair, where the hair get in contact with literally everything else, like with the skin, with the air around, with the hoodie that she's wearing. And this is, if you can get a lot of details in hair from like their silhouette, this already just feels interesting, and it feels more complex, and it feels drawn through. And this is something that I like creating first. This is not the approach that I would take if, for example, I am drawing a cover, or if I'm drawing, let's say, standalone image. But for the comic, kind of, this is I have a certain specific rule of hair in order not to overdo it, because I don't want to go in complete realism with my hair. So for me, it's this rule. I start with the silhouette of the hair patch overall, and then I work my way through in the body of the hair. So only after I finish doing the edge, for example, I finish this rim, I usually start with the rim, and then I finished drawing how the hair contact with literally everything else, like skin or clothes and whatnot. Only then I start drawing individual hair links. I'm not even starting to draw individual hair links. This is only when I start drawing information within the body of hair. And how I like to go is the same, from bigger to smaller. So I start with the whole body of hair in the beginning and the details of the whole body of hair, and then I go in and with lighter color start drawing more like of a thicker strands of the hair. As you can see, like this, still I'm not drawing individual hair links, I'm drawing like certain like blocks of hair strings, and then slowly I make my way to the smaller hair links in the areas when I feel it's necessary to have them. I don't like having small hair links, like just go and put them into details. For me, it's the idea of where you strategically put small hair links. So you don't put it everywhere. And trust me, when I start drawing hair digitally, at first I would draw every single hair links. I'm not kidding you. I would spend hours and hours and hours drawing the smallest amount of hair. Just this is how I thought you're supposed to do it. Like people have like millions of hair on their head, and you're supposed to draw millions of hair on their head. You're not supposed to do it. So how I'm doing, as I said, like I'm just drawing this kind of blocks and like bunches of hair together, and I'm drawing them. And then if I want to draw small hair links, basically the idea is just to imply that there's tiny small hairs there without drawing all of them. So you draw them in the areas where they would be the most visible. So you draw it on the edges, as I said, on the edges of the hair, like where the trim is. This is where you see individual hairs, or where the hair touches the skin or the clothes. Or if it is within the body of hair, you draw individual hair links or hairs where there is the most contrast. So basically when you have the most difference between the light and the dark, as you can see, for example, those strands of hair, I try to add more details exactly where they would be the most visible, like the brightest hair on the like a darker background, so that it stands out the most. So you place them strategically where they're immediately visible. So you don't draw all of them, but you draw some, and after looking, some people just assume, oh, I see the most visible ones. The other ones, they're not like I immediately notice them, but they're clearly there. So this is my strategy by drawing hair. And yeah, this is what I love about close-ups, because I try not to overdo my hair still if the characters are more farther away. But when it is a close-up, I can go a little bit bananas. And honestly, sometimes I have to control myself, because Tsugai's hair are perfect for this because they're curly. And curly hair, I feel you can allow a little bit of more fun and small curls and like small hairs to just have like creative, I don't know, just more creativity that you can put in. With Kuroi hair, for example, because his hair are straight, I have to hold myself, because if I start going a little bit too much in detail with his hair will stop reading as straight, and that means I'm drawing the wrong hair for my character, so I have to control myself. Though when he's like shocked, surprised, or like in stress or moving too fast, this is where I take advantage of it and draw like a small hair that, for example, may be a little bit wet because of the sweat or something like this, that for like maybe he has like sweat on his neck or on the forehead, so the small hair will get affected and will have a little curl in it. So this is kind of what I like doing, but yeah, sometimes I have to really control it. But with close-ups like this, oh my goodness, I'm just taking the whole advantage, especially with Tsugai hair. And I need to admit, Tsugai hair were harder to draw in the beginning, because I didn't realize how to draw her hair, because they're technically white, and white, I overall don't really like drawing white things, because white things, it's really hard to show shape on something that is white, because it is so bright, so white. And it's just, if you draw complete realism, it's usually not a lot of like shades, colors, and shapes in there. Like you wouldn't put a lot of information there to make it sell, and this is really boring for me to draw. So especially when the hair is white and her skin is also pale, in the beginning I would really struggle to draw her hair so that they're not blending and competing with her skin, and they all kind of blend and mush, especially with her eyebrows. I would draw her eyebrows, but because they're so, pale, they would almost disappear, so you can differentiate them by the color, so they're different colors than the skin, but they're the same tone than the skin, and it can get pretty annoying because it's really blends and it's hard to show characters' emotion. So with her hair now, I'm just drawing them a little darker, and I assigned some sort of a color. Even though they're white, I decided so they're like grayish with like a cold gray color. And this, is it cold gray color? Depends. It depends on the environment. But basically, I decided that I will make her hair darker, and the base color that I use for her hair will be darker than the color of her skin. So every time I draw her hair, they already set up to be darker with her for her skin, and when I draw highlights, they're kind of within this darker area, so they stand out. So yeah, so maybe I should do a whole video about her hair, but for now I'm moving to the last part of this kind of 2-page redraw or additional page thing, is the hand. I left it for last, and honestly I typically wouldn't leave it for last, but I did just because I just didn't want to draw it really. Sometimes I really love to draw hands, and sometimes, well, hands are not something, again, it's like this pose, it's not something that I can easily draw, like just, watch some TV show on Netflix and easily draw a hand. A lot of the times I have to focus and think about it, and as I'm drawing, to really think, does it look correct or not? So I wasn't in the mood to do it up till the very end. And for like some hands I really enjoy drawing, and some poses I'm like, I don't want to think about it for too long, and I leave them till the end. So this time I did it. I left it for the end. And the thing is, my tip with drawing hands is that you really want to focus on the joints. You really have to have a good understanding where the joints are. I would not suggest to draw soft hands and just counting fingers and like think about it as a blob and then divide it by 4 fingers and then big finger. I would not do that. I actually like thinking about the hand, about like just keeping the joints in mind, where each joint is in relationship to other joints, where the 4 joints that I like inside of the palm and then the joints on the fingers themselves. I like to keep it in mind and always make sure I emphasize them well enough and emphasize the shadows on the fingers so that people know how the fingers are bended. So in my opinion, this is just it makes it more clear. And everything with drawing, like the most successful drawing is the one that you understand what is drawn, right? So this is one of the important things when you're drawing anything. You need to make sure it's clear what is drawn and nobody's getting confused. And I feel like with hands, it's really easy to get confused because it's such a complex shape. Like hands are very complex thing to draw. So for me, something that I like doing, like especially for the comic when I cannot necessarily give all the attention to drawing hands, I need to simplify them. To me, I just focus on the joints. And as you can see, like I just make sure to emphasize, like my finger is never one shade. If I draw a finger, half of the finger would be a little bit more in shadow, depending on, lighting circumstances and whatnot, because I always want to emphasize that fingers are bended. Another thing, again, talking about bending of the fingers always bended in a relaxed state unless you are stressing out your hand. Because of the anatomy of the fingers, they will always be in a bended state. Like when fingers are relaxed, unless they're forcing them otherwise, they will have a natural bend in their joints. So this is something that's also important to keep in mind. Don't draw straight fingers unless it's like a specific you have a specific goal for it. Even with people pointing with the like index finger, still sometimes finger would be still bended even though people are pointing. So this idea for me personally is important to keep in mind, is keep the focus on joints, and after focusing on joints, focusing on the skin around joints, because also why joints stand up so much on the actual hand is because they have the most folds. So if your fingers are bended, like for example you have your hand in the fist, then you will have no real folds on your actual knuckles. What you would see, like your knuckles and the rest of the finger would be first one color. You would see kind of not folds, but like leftovers of like the wrinkles on your knuckles. But then when you unfold it, you will see a lot of the wrinkles and a lot of the folds on the knuckles immediately. And also because there is a lot of skin built up, what will happen, you will see that the skin appear darker, a little bit darker on your knuckles right there, because the result of skin brought together, and it kind of darkens because of this. So that's kind of goes the same for, actually this is where my knowledge of English is betraying me. So there's a knuckles, so there's a joints on the finger and the joints in the actual palm. Anywho, any joint that you see on your hand, please make sure to make sure it's anatomically correct, and make sure that it's clear what is happening and what each joint is doing. So with this said, this is a wrap for this very long video. That's one of these long videos, but I hope it was helpful for you guys and I was able to elaborate a little bit on the subject of redrawing things or editing pages post factum after you already drew it. And I thought that this weekend was a great example because I really have one body of work that done this weekend. So thank you so much guys for watching, and I'm really happy that you showed up to watch this episode, and I hope to see you in my next video that will be of me standing up in the colorful and talking. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.